I was getting a lot of questions about drawing the graph for a couple of your lecture question equations. So I wanted to create a video to talk through that. So what I was getting from you guys is that solving the inequality was mostly going okay. So I'm going to go kind of quickly over that part of the problem. For a sine or cosine function, you would set up an inequality going from 0 to 2 pi, just because that's where your typical cycle for sine and cosine lie. And you copy down just exactly what's inside of your given function, put that between 0 and 2 pi, and then work on isolating x. So here I'm going to subtract pi over 2 from all three parts. So I have negative pi over 2 is less than or equal to 2x, less than or equal to 2 pi, which would be 4 pi over 2, minus 1 pi over 2 would leave me with 3 pi over 2. And then I'm going to divide all three parts by 2. Which, okay, so if I'm dividing a fraction by 2, I might look at that as 2 over 1. And instead of dividing by 2, multiply by the reciprocal. And so over here I have negative pi over 2 times 1 over 2. So negative pi over 4 is less than or equal to x, less than or equal to, if I do the same thing over here, 3 pi over 2 times 1/2, I end up with 3 pi over 4. So I wanted to go fairly quickly over that part because what I'm hearing from you guys is that part's mostly going okay. It's drawing the graph. Once you have that inequality, that's more of a problem. So I'm going to talk through that now. So once you have your inequality solved, we should mark those x values on our graphing grid here. And you can space these however you want. As long as you clearly label your increments, that's fine. So I'm going to double space this just so the graph isn't too crowded. So I'm going to call this negative pi over 4, and then I'll just count over. So here's 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to call this right here 3 pi over 4. So I would just evenly space my pi over 4 increments. Now for plotting the points. So you need to have a picture in your head, or I guess on your paper, of what the cosine graph looks like. So just plain y equals cosine of x has this kind of U shape. We get a complete cycle as x goes from 0 to 2 pi. The cosine graph starts and ends at its maximum value at 1. Sorry about my phone there. Right in the middle, so if I divide that interval from 0 to 2 pi in half, it reaches its minimum value. Right between, let's say it this way. Right in the middle of the first half, you get an x-intercept in the cosine graph. And right in the middle of the second half, you get an x-intercept, so that the overall graph looks like that. So I'm going to do the same thing over here with my interval from negative pi over 4 to 3 pi over 4. When I graph this, though, I'm going to keep in mind that the amplitude is 3 because of that 3 out in front of the cosine function. Okay, so cosine, I just know from looking over here, the basic shape starts and ends at its maximum point, 3. And just so you know, so you're not screaming at me right now, I am aware of this +1 here. I'm going to worry about that in just a second. So I'm going to get the graph of 3 cosine of all this stuff on my, well, I was going to say on my paper, but on the screen here first. Okay, so cosine starts and ends at its maximum, which the amplitude's 3, so I'm going to put that at 3. Right in the middle, so I would just count my spaces now. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So in the middle, that would be 2 spaces over. Make sure you count 0 as one of those. So if I go over 2 spaces, I'm right here, which would be pi over 4. But you don't need to label those x values. Just here's the middle. This is where the cosine graph reaches its minimum value. Again, since the amplitude's 3, I'm going to put that at negative 3 down here. Halfway between the max and the min, so that's going to be here where x is 0, you get an x-intercept. And in the second half, halfway between the max and the min, you get an x-intercept. And I'm going to make a little dotted graph here. Oops. Well, I meant for it to be dotted. Now, well, and let me just clearly label. So what I graphed there is 3 cosine of 2x plus pi over 2. Oops, oh boy. Okay, plus pi over 2. I need to get better at writing with this thing, I know. Now I'll turn that into the graph of y equals 1 plus 3 cosine of 2x plus pi over 2. And so to do that, all I have to do is shift everything up 1 unit. So just take each point, shift it up 1. So this thing moves from 3 to 4. Same with our other max point over here, it goes from 3 to 4. This point right here goes from 0 to 1. Down here goes from -3 up to -2. This bumps up to 1. Okay, and so I wonder if I can. No. Sorry guys, I was just trying to widen my pen a little bit so maybe this looks a little cleaner. Okay, there. That in red would be the graph of the given function.